Okay, so I want to start today with a proposition that's going to sound um, completely backwards.
Mm.
It might even make you a little defensive.
Oh,
What if kindness is actually the problem?
that is a very risky way to open conversation. Kindness is usually the one thing we can all agree on.
I know. Stick with me here. We usually think of a good society as one that's, overflowing with charity, with compassion, people rushing to help each other.
Sure, that's the ideal.
But what if a society that relies so heavily on individual acts of kindness is actually just proving that it has failed to provide basic human dignity? What if niceness is just a Band-Aid for a broken system?
Okay, I think I see where you're going. You're getting at the tension between, say, the neighbor who helps you carry your groceries up the stairs because they want to,
Right.
versus the neighbor who has to carry you up the stairs because the building was designed without any way for you to get to your own apartment.
All right. Exactly. It's the difference between a helping hand and a broken stair. And that specific tension between the warm, fuzzy feeling of charity and the cold, hard reality of design is the absolute heart of the manuscript we are unpacking today.
Yes.
It is titled The Unseen Ummah: Disability, Dignity, and the Crisis of Inclusion in Muslim Communities.
It's a really fascinating text by an author named Kawsar Mohamed. It's slated for publication in March 2026, so we are getting a very early look at this.
We are.
And I think it's important to clarify something right up front. While the title mentions the Ummah, the Muslim community, and it draws on Islamic history and theology, the core argument here is about design, psychology, and really the mechanics of human dignity. It applies to absolutely everyone.
It really does. It's a manual on how we build our world. And the central concept she introduces is something she calls the Invisible Ummah.
Which is such a haunting phrase, isn't it?
It is. It describes a population, specifically people with disabilities, who are present in the head count. They're physically there, but they aren't anticipated. They aren't in the blueprint.
That word anticipated is doing so much heavy lifting there. It suggests that true inclusion isn't about how you react when someone shows up.
No.
It's about whether you expected them to show up in the first place. I mean, if you're surprised by the presence of a wheelchair user, that surprise, that's the failure.
To really understand how she arrived at these conclusions, we have to look at her own origin story. It spans two completely different worlds, and honestly, it defies every stereotype I had in my head. She moved to Canada from Somalia when she was 9 years old.
And usually the narrative we expect there is developing nation equals bad for disability, and a wealthy Western nation equals good.
Right, that's the standard assumption. But her experience was almost the inverse. In Somalia, she didn't have a wheelchair, she couldn't walk, so her father carried her everywhere.
Wow.
And she describes being carried up the school stairs every morning not as a burden or a tragedy, but as a rhythm.
She uses this beautiful language about it. She says she felt enveloped. She didn't feel different or broken because she was literally attached to the people who loved her.
She was physically integrated into the movement of her family.
Yes.
But then she lands in Canada. She gets her first wheelchair. And in movies or books, the wheelchair is often the symbol of the tragedy, right? The confinement.
The whole chair-bound trope.
Yeah, exactly. But for Kawsar, it was a rocket ship. She says it was movement. It was possibility.
That's amazing.
For the first time, she didn't need to ask her dad for permission to move. She didn't need to wait. She could just go.
That is such a crucial shift in perspective. The technology gave her independence, but, and here is the twist, that independence came with a cost she didn't expect. When you're being carried, you don't notice that the ground is uneven. You don't notice the curb height or the sand.
She's just floating above it.
Right. But the moment you're rolling yourself, the environment suddenly becomes an adversary. Those stairs that her father used to climb so easily, now they're a wall.
And that leads to this story that really stuck with me. The playground story.
Oh, this one is powerful.
This is in Ottawa. She's a kid. She has her new wheelchair. She's feeling this fresh independence. She sees a metal car structure in the park, and she desperately wants to play on it.
But the playground is filled with sand.
Which, for a wheelchair user, might as well be quicksand.
It just swallows the wheels instantly. You can't generate any momentum.
So she's stuck at the edge. And her reaction isn't to cry. It isn't to wave down a parent to carry her. She decides to crawl.
Right.
She drags herself, grain by grain, through the deep sand to get to that car. She plays for a bit. And then she crawls back to her chair.
It's such a visceral image, a child crawling through sand just to play. But what did you make of her reflection on that moment? Because she doesn't frame it as some triumph of the human spirit.
No, not at all. She specifically points out that no one applauded. It wasn't some inspirational viral moment. It was just a kid finding a workaround. But looking back, she realized that was the moment she understood her place in this new world. She didn't feel like she was broken. She felt like the world simply hadn't expected her to be there.
And that is the invisible ummah concept in action. Present, but not anticipated.
Exactly.
No one put that sand there to hurt her.
Right.
The city planners didn't sit down and say, how do we keep disabled kids out? They just, they forgot.
Yeah.
They designed for the average kid, and she wasn't in that blueprint. It was exclusion by omission.
And this brings us right back to that opening question about kindness. Because if someone had walked by and seen her crawling, they probably would have run over to help.
Of course.
They would have picked her up. That would be kindness.
Right. But Kawsar makes this brilliant razor-sharp distinction here between mercy and justice. And I think this is the core intellectual contribution of the book.
Let's break that down, because we use those words interchangeably a lot.
We do. So mercy, or charity, is reactive. It's helping the girl out of the sand. It's holding the heavy door for someone on crutches.
It feels good.
It feels good for the helper. It's a beautiful human impulse.
Yeah.
But it is episodic. It happens when I, the able-bodied person, happen to be there and happen to be in a good mood.
It relies on luck.
Exactly. Justice, on the other hand, is structural. Justice is anticipatory. Justice is building a rubberized playground surface so she never has to crawl in the first place.
Yeah.
Justice is an automatic door opener. It renders the mercy unnecessary.
There's a psychological layer to this that she touches on, which I found just profound. The exhaustion of gratitude.
Oh, the gratitude tax. This is huge.
I had never thought about it from this angle.
Yeah.
But if you rely on mercy, if you rely on people holding doors or lifting you upstairs, you have to be charming. You have to smile.
You have to perform.
You have to say thank you 50 times a day just to access basic spaces.
It creates a permanent power dynamic, doesn't it? The helper is the benevolent savior. The disabled person is the dependent recipient. You are, in a way, apologizing for your existence. When you replace mercy with justice, when you install the ramp, you remove the need for that transaction. You restore agency. A person can just enter a building without owing anyone a smile.
That is such a heavy mental load to carry on top of the physical reality of the disability, the constant performance of being the good disabled person.
And it connects to how we frame disability, theologically or philosophically. The book really tackles the test narrative.
Yeah, talk about that. Because I think in a lot of traditions, there's this idea that disability is a test for the person who has it. Like, God is testing your patience, and you'll be rewarded for enduring it.
Right. It's meant to be a comforting thought. It gives meaning to the suffering.
Sure.
But Kawsar flips it completely. She argues that the presence of vulnerable people isn't a test for the vulnerable person. It's a test for the community.
That is a radical shift.
The test isn't, can Kawsar endure the sand? The test is, will the city build a playground that welcomes everyone? It shifts the moral weight from the individual's grit to the collective's design choices.
So if a person is excluded, it's not their failure to adapt. It's society's failure to pass the test.
Precisely. And that leads us into the whole culture of seeing, because you can have the infrastructure, you can have the laws, but if the culture isn't there, you still have isolation.
She uses two elevator anecdotes to illustrate this, comparing her life in Canada to a trip to Mecca. And the comparison is, well, it's complicated.
It is. So in Canada, she describes waiting for an elevator in a busy building. The doors open and it's full.
Okay.
The people inside look at her, they make eye contact, they see the wheelchair, but nobody moves, the doors just close.
The polite ignore?
The polite ignore. It wasn't malicious, no one shouted at her, but there was no moral urgency. They saw her, but they didn't feel a compulsion to make space.
It was a cold, polite exclusion.
Yes, and then she goes to Mecca, which is one of the most crowded places on earth during the pilgrimage.
Right.
And the dynamic shifts. It's no longer polite indifference, it's sheer competition. She calls it scarcity conditioning.
Let's unpack that term. Scarcity conditioning.
It's a psychological state. When people feel that resources, space, time, access are extremely limited, their brain just switches into survival mode.
Right.
My forward motion matters more than yours. In that environment, accessibility becomes a luxury item. People aren't thinking, let me make space for the wheelchair. They are thinking, if I don't get on this elevator, I might get crushed, or I'll miss the prayer.
So in the polite society, it's normative blindness.
Hmm.
People just don't think about the alternative body because they don't have to.
Exactly.
In the crowded society, it's survival of the fittest.
Right. And normative blindness is the root of bad design everywhere. I mean, architects don't wake up planning to exclude. They just design for the body they inhabit. If I can walk upstairs, I design stairs. I fail to hallucinate the reality of someone who can't.
And she points out this weird paradox where Western nations have the laws like the ADA in the U.S. or the Accessible Canada Act, which force the building to be accessible.
The compliance is there.
The building lets you in, but the culture might be cold, people might stare or hesitate.
Whereas in some traditional communities, there's this deep cultural compassion. People really want to help. They will carry you without hesitation. But the law and the infrastructure just aren't there.
So you have a lot of heart, but no ramps.
You have heart, but no ramps.
It seems like we need both. We need the ramp and the smile.
We absolutely need both. I mean, laws force behavior change, which eventually shifts culture, but culture needs to drive the desire for the law in the first place. You need that moral urgency to pass the bill.
I want to pivot to the history section of the manuscript, because this was the part that honestly surprised me the most. I think we have this assumption that inclusion is a modern, progressive, Western idea. You know, we think we invented it in the 1990s.
Right, the enlightened moderns. We look back at history and just assume it was a dark age for anyone with a disability.
But Kawsar goes back 1,400 years to challenge that. She brings up a figure named Ibn Maktoum.
A fascinating historical figure. He was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, and he was blind.
Now, usually when we hear about disabled Sunnis in ancient history, it's a story about charity.
Yes.
Someone took care of them. They were the recipient of kindness.
Exactly. But that's not this story. The Prophet Muhammad didn't just take care of Ibn Maktoum, he left him in charge.
What do you mean?
When the Prophet left the city of Medina for military campaigns or other reasons, he appointed Ibn Maktoum as the governor of the city.
Wait.
Not once, but multiple times.
Let's just pause on that image for a second. A blind man was the acting governor of a major city in the 7th century.
Yes. He led the prayers, which is the highest symbolic role, and he managed the affairs of the state.
That seems incredibly advanced. I mean, do we even have blind governors today?
It would be headline news if we did. But Kawsar's analysis of this is what's so important. She says this proves that in the foundational era of this community, physical capability and leadership potential were not seen as linked.
Yeah.
His blindness didn't disqualify him from power. Inclusion wasn't about protection. It was about participation.
That is a massive distinction. Participation versus protection. I feel like even today, we fall so easily into protection mode. Oh, let's keep you safe. Let's help you. Let's put you in a special program.
Yes.
But we don't say, here are the keys to the city.
Precisely. Protection can be paternalistic. It can be limiting. It keeps the person in a kind of childlike state. Participation assumes competence. It assumes you have something to offer, not just needs to be met.
She also reinterprets a very famous metaphor in the Islamic tradition, the body metaphor. The community is like one body.
If one part hurts, the rest of the body stays awake in fever.
Right. And I've always heard that explained as emotional empathy. If you're sad, I should feel sad.
And that's a valid reading for sure. But the book argues it's also structural. Think about biology. If your leg is injured, your body doesn't just feel bad about it. It sends resources.
Right.
It compensates. It changes how it moves. It develops a limp to accommodate that injury so the whole organism can keep functioning.
It adapts structurally.
Exactly. So accessibility is the immune response of the collective body. It's how the body heals itself to function as a whole.
I like that framing.
If we're cutting off 15% of the population, which is the global average for disability, because of stairs or bad website design, we are literally hobbling the collective body. We are voluntarily choosing to be weaker.
And that leads directly to the economics of this. Because hobbling yourself is expensive.
It's incredibly expensive, and this is where the book gets really practical.
She dives into this concept of zakat. For listeners who don't know, this is the obligatory alms or charity in Islam. It's a massive transfer of wealth annually.
And traditionally and currently, zakat is almost always treated as relief. You give money to the poor so they can buy food today. It's a safety net.
And Kawsar argues this is insufficient.
She argues it's a missed opportunity. She wants to reframe zakat as infrastructure.
Give me a concrete example of what that shift looks like.
Okay, so instead of using that money to buy a wheelchair for one person, which is relief, imagine pooling those funds to build an accessible transport system for a whole neighborhood, or retrofitting a school so every disabled child can attend.
It's the teach a man to fish concept, but applied to city planning.
It's moving from dependency to agency. If I give you money every month because you can't get a job due to transport barriers, I'm maintaining your dependency.
You're subsidizing the exclusion.
Yes, I'm subsidizing your exclusion. If I use that money to fix the transport system, I restore your agency. You can go get that job yourself.
She mentions the cost of exclusion.
It's in the trillions globally. If you exclude people from the workforce, from education, from the economy, you aren't just losing their productivity, their talent, you are paying for their dependency.
It's a cycle.
It creates a cycle of poverty that is completely avoidable.
There was another economic term she used, whack. I wasn't familiar with this one.
WAC is a really cool historical concept. It's basically a permanent endowment. Historically, wealthy people would donate a building or a farm or a piece of land. And the profits from that would fund a hospital or a university or public water fountains forever. It's assets dedicated to public good.
And she suggests reviving this for technology.
Yes. Imagine a WAF endowment dedicated solely to accessibility tech, funding research into affordable prosthetics, or a fund that automatically retrofits every new mosque or community center.
It moves funding from one-off donations to permanent institutional support.
Exactly.
It stops us from having to fundraise every single time a ramp breaks.
It's about sustainability, making dignity sustainable, not just a seasonal charity drive. And she ties this all into universal design. This is a concept designers love, but it's worth repeating here. When you design for the most vulnerable, you actually make life better for everyone.
The curb cut effect.
The classic example. Curb cuts were invented for wheelchair users. But who uses them?
Me, with my stroller, every single day.
Exactly. Parents with strollers, travelers with rolling luggage, skateboarders, delivery guys with hand trucks. When you solve for the invisible population, you inadvertently solve friction for the whole population.
A ramp is easier for everyone than stairs.
Right. Closed captions are great for the deaf, but they're also great for people watching videos on a noisy train.
It really is a win-win.
Yeah.
But it requires that shift in thinking.
It requires anticipation.
So if we zoom out, we have gone from the personal story of the girl crawling in the sand, to the theology of the body, to the history of a blind governor, to the hard economics of infrastructure. It really is a complete restructuring of how we view society.
It is. And I think the most powerful takeaway from the book is that this isn't about being nice. We have to stop thinking of accessibility as a favor we do for those people.
It's not a favor.
It is a measure of civilization. Kawsar argues that if we build a world where anyone can enter, where anyone can participate, we haven't done something extraordinary.
We haven't earned a gold star.
We haven't. We have simply fulfilled the basic requirement of a just society.
We've just met the base.
We have just met the baseline. A society that excludes its members by design is structurally illegitimate. It is failing its primary function.
That brings me back to that diagnostic question she poses near the end of the book. It's a question that I think every listener should ask about their own workplace, their school, their place of worship.
Who gets to choose how they belong?
That's the one. Who gets to choose?
If the answer is only the able-bodied get to choose, then we have failed the test. Not the individual's test, but our test.
It's a heavy thought, but a necessary one. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a challenge based on the book.
Okay.
Next time you walk into a building, a sleek, modern, beautiful building, don't just look at the architecture. Don't just admire the glass and the steel.
Look at the threshold. Look at the stairs. Look at the signage.
And ask yourself, who was forgotten in this blueprint? Who is present but not anticipated?
Because once you see the invisible Ummah, you can't unsee it. And that is where the work begins.